Extensions are where Switchvox users and phones reside and how we set up phones to connect to the PBX. While every user must be an extension, not every extension is a user. It's also where we set up routing to other various destinations like system features and feature codes, essentially all routable extensions. These include but aren't limited to IVRs, call queues, page groups, voicemail access, and more. In this guide, we'll cover extension management, groups, templates, permissions, and call parking. Let's start with the system extension settings from Setup, Extensions, and Settings. Setting the extension length here tells the system how many digits to expect when people dial an internal user. This can be changed later on and will not affect extensions already set up. When I say the system will expect this, because when dialing 3 digits, there's a dial timeout that will tell the system don't wait for any other keys, dial an extension since the extension length is 3 digits. More on this later. Also, when you're setting up the extension, we'll expect to key in a 3-digit extension per this setting. Beep after an assisted transfer will give an audible tone to a user who transfers a call to another extension after the transfer has completed. Enable chat in client apps pertain to the Sangoma Talk soft phones. Do we want to have chat enabled within those applications by default? And the P-Series call log app is the P-Series phones from Sangoma, and that's giving access to the call log application. The user authorization type is set to local, meaning the local database of Switchvox will hold the credentials for logging in by users and admins. You do have the option to switch that over to LDAP if you have such a service available. If you recall our previous video on web proxies and SSLs, a valid SSL is most likely needed to enable LDAP services, so please review that video for information on getting the Switchvox up and running with SSL certificates. This may also look familiar, the Sangoma Talk mobile settings, which are stored in the cloud, and we'll take this information from these settings here. That includes a particular host name to register to, an outbound proxy and port, which is most commonly used with the Sangoma SBC, and the transport method. I should be disabled if you are using the Sangoma SBC, but is a function that you may visit if you have NAT forwarding issues, one-way audio, that sort of thing. ICE is generally the workaround protocol for NAT traversal. Now, 10-digit dialing removes the need to dial a 9 or a 1 to call outside the system. Such was a popular method in legacy PBX setups. Your extension dial patterns will reflect this change if enabled, and outgoing call rules must also be configured for this type of dialing in your outgoing call rules, which is coming up in a later video. If you peer another Switchvox or have extensions with a longer extension range, you can expect a slight delay as the system waits for further user input. Adjusting the max extension range length to match your extension length will tell the system how many digits to expect to wait for before trying that extension, shortening the wait time for further user input. All that to say, if I were to enter in 2 digits into a phone, considering that might be valid somewhere else in the system, Switchvox will wait to see if there are any other digits inputted before moving on with an action. If we put in 3 digits, it'll recognize that's the max extension length and will cut down on that wait time and assume that it is, in fact, a 3-digit extension that was dialed. And I hope that makes sense. In theme with preparing for our extension setup, we'll talk about parking lots very quickly. We'll see on the extensions page we have a default parking lot 700, which means 700 can be dialed from any phone to reach this parking lot, or a call flow could route to this extension to hit the call parking feature. Now, the reason this is part of extension setup is you're going to see it not only in the extension creation, but also for extension creation. It'll list the default. So let's see what the options are. Parking lot start is 701 and end is 709, which means that when we do park a call, which can be done again by the extension number or with a click inside of an app, including the switchboard, the call will be assigned to one of those available slots. Because calls can be parked and retrieved without any authentication, often parking lots are separated into groups, or you could look at it as departments even, whereas a billing department might park a call and ask someone else in that department to retrieve the call. so they wouldn't want to share a parking lot with the support team, for example. You can customize the music on hold. Currently, I just have the default group available. And the timeout behavior. After 90 seconds, send the call to this extension. If no extension is specified, it will return the call back to the parker. And by default, we have all user extensions inside of this parking lot. Now, if we head back and we want to create a new parking lot, we go to create extension. We're going to find call parking as one of the options. I'll set up just a parking lot called manager and make sure the extension is out of range. I've got 8 slots and I'll keep the rest at their defaults. Now I'll make the test call over to extension 200. Now that the call is answered, I can go ahead and put this on park. With this action button with the 3 dots, the caller now hears music on hold. If I check the parking lots, I will see here manager 200 is in lot 701. Here's more information on the parker and the parkee. You can dial 701 manually from any phone, or simply hit this retrieve. This information should bridge the gap on the default parking options when you're configuring extensions or even extension templates, as seen here under PBX features. Okay, let's head back up to the top and we'll look at extension groups. Now, groups of extensions are a convenient way to organize users while allowing bulk actions, such as what permissions the users have to manage other extensions, creating internal directory lists, and routing inbound calls. Now, we've got 2 admin-only groups, all extensions, which contains, as you probably guessed, all the extensions on the system. There's also a default group, which we can certainly use, or we can create a new one. You can see under the note that all extensions are automatically added to this group upon creation. Feature codes are not included in this group. And in this particular case, I can modify or I can delete it. Instead, we're going to create an extension group. I'm going to create a group called managers, which will contain managers of certain users that'll have a little bit more permissions. Now, if you're a veteran of the system health and maintenance video, you'll remember that storage should be closely monitored and the restrictions on the disk space should be implemented. This includes the voicemail and fax quota, which can be done, of course, on an individual extension basis as well as extension templates, but can also be done here in the groups. Here's how the voicemail quota is set up. If you leave this setting blank, it indicates unlimited space. If you enter a 0, no voicemail or faxes can be stored. If a quota is set for a group and for an extension in the group, the extension's mailbox quota is used. If an extension is a member of multiple groups, the lowest mailbox quota is used. And if an extension is not allowed to have voicemail, this setting is not relevant. If enabling the admin-only toggle, this group is hidden from other users. That includes the user's contact list in applications and phones, other places on the system such as the switchboard and the company directory. Since I'm compiling a list of managers, I'm going to choose to admin only this group. Lastly, I have my group members. I can click on the little search icon to add members. You can see here it's very flexible in terms of adding phone extensions individually, entire extension groups, or other types of extensions. These other types of extensions I alluded to in the introduction, such as feature codes and other routable extensions. I'll choose a couple from here by holding Control and multi-selecting. Now that I'm satisfied with my current setup, I'll hit Save Extensions Group. So just to recap, groups can be used to bulk assign settings and permissions, such as with extension templates, also to route calls to, or to include in a company directory. As long as admin only is not toggled to yes, they can also be accessed from the company directory through an IVR system, through the group pickup extension, which allows all users of the group to be called at once. Useful if you've segmented the users into departments, and those individual items will come up in different videos in the series. The bottom line is you've now created a routable extension group on the Switchvox. Let's head over to extension templates under Setup Templates. Now, using customized extension templates is a convenient way to deploy SIP extensions with predefined settings. These templates can be used to provision users based on their physical location, language, group membership, and outgoing dial rules. Using this quick setup method, only the user's personal information, such as name, email, passwords, and so on, will need to be specified when creating a new extension. We do have a default template here, which can be modified at any time or even cloned or copied in order to create a new template based on the settings from this one. Let's just go ahead and create a new extension template. I'll call this one Managers. The emergency location, I'll choose Office 1. This was set up in the Getting Started video, but if you haven't got this going yet, you can go under Tools and head over to Phone Locations. Now, the additional location info field helps with E911 compliance. It can inform the PSAP of the specific location of the caller if this 19-character field is supported by the trunk provider that you have, i.e. they accept PID-FLOW or PID-FLOW, then this additional location info can be sent with the call. The benefit here is that, well, traditionally each user would have had to have their own DID because that was attached to a specific location in terms of 911. You could reduce the amount of DIDs needed by simply providing each user with an additional location info. So the parent DID, for example, may be attached to Office 1, and then the additional location information is attached to that user. At the time of this recording, SIPStation does not support PID-FLOW. However, the VI SIP trunking does. So if this is an important feature for your organization, please reach out to your sales engineer or sales rep to get more information on enabling this. Now I'll skip by some of the more obvious fields here and head to a not so obvious one, forward out of voicemail. When a caller does reach a user's voicemail, they can press 0 and this extension will be dialed. That can be chosen from this list. Commonly, this would be a receptionist, maybe back to the IVR, and so forth. Since we will be creating new users, we have the option to force change of the password on the next login, and a language confirmation option on the login should you have multilingual users. Such as we had with groups, we do have the voicemail and fax mailbox quota. We can specify that here. And as a quick reminder, this mailbox storage quota takes precedence over the group storage if specified. The sound prompt language can be changed here. That is the prompts of such things as voicemails, voicemail setup, asking them to change their greetings and so on. We'll cover sound packs in a later video. Minimalist mode reduces the CSS and the loading of the textures and the styles on the web interface. So if you're thinking users would be heavy on mobile or in a bandwidth restrictive network, that would be an option to toggle on. Another area for outgoing call rules. This could change based on the switchbox that the user is on. If you've got a peered switchbox environment, this would have to correlate with your outgoing call rules as well, which we'll cover in another video. And a 1 can be prepended based on your outgoing call rules and your SIP trunk rules, depending on what your provider takes or what rules that you want to have enforced from the outbound call rules section of Switchvox. I'm going to enter in a voicemail quota. I'm going to remove the 9 from my particular dialing, as well as the 1. I want everything to be treated as a local 10-digit based call, and I'll go ahead and save this. Now, I'm not quite done with my template settings. I'm going to go back in and modify. I didn't have to save at that profile information, but you can if you'd like. And we'll move over to the phone settings tab. These settings here are meant for Sangoma phones for provisioning purposes, starting with line label, which I'll keep at their defaults. The message button that appears on the phone can either open visual voicemail, which I prefer, or dial the voicemail extension directly, where users will have to put in their voicemail password in order to listen to messages, change greetings, and so forth. In either case, the voicemail system will recognize the extension that's calling into it, bypassing any credentials needed. If this isn't secure enough for you, you can toggle on the required numeric password, forcing the user to enter in their voicemail password to access the box. If you were to choose dial voicemail extension, we can specify another extension here for that voicemail access, which is default 899, and when using visual voicemail, you won't have to dial this in. The next options are for the visuals of the phone screen, idle screen, the display settings, and the sounds. We've also got contact settings and answering calls. Set those as preferred. A feature I should discuss in more detail is directed pickup ringtone, which by default is set to mute. This means that anyone receiving a direct pickup call will only have a visual indicator such as a flashing light on the handset or a pop-up that a call is coming in, and will have no audible warning, which may be quite important to you, as usually it's a VIP call. Options here are alarm all the way down to different sound tones. So be sure to enable one of those to get a audible direct pickup call alert. Under advanced phone options, we have the option to have the phones only accept calls from this switch box or the network set up on Switchvox, which are under phone networks, or any host, which would technically allow outside callers to reach the phone even if they're not allowed on the inbound calls, such as SIP calls. I can change the SIP transport, TLS SRTP, for secure transport of the SIP packets and secure media. Although the port can be specified here as you'd wish, as long as your firewall rules permit, generally 5061 would be the setting for TLS. If you don't plan on managing and maintaining a third-party SSL certificate and don't want to run into any issues with connecting because of an invalid SSL, toggle this to yes. And any dial plan specific overrides can be customized here. You can set the phone's admin password here, which would access the phone's web interface, as well as can be inputted on the phone to make manual changes. Ethernet port modes can be left automatic, but if you would like to restrict the bandwidth, you can do so. And if you have any custom QoS or VLAN IDs that these will be sitting on, you can enter those in here. Codec prioritization, with G722 being the high definition codec in place as number 1. And if you'd like these phones to be part of a multicast group where they can use a multicast paging device, you can add those here. I've already got one set up. We'll be covering multicast in a later video. PLAR is a feature where when the handset is taken off the hook, it automatically dials an extension of your choice. Now, if you're not using Sangoma phones, we can head over to other manufacturers. Common phone settings and Polycom phone settings can only be used with phone feature packs, which is why we don't recommend them due to the date of the firmware lock being older. Instead, settings for third-party handsets can be configured under the Advanced Phone Options menu. Now, over on the Common Settings tab, we have all of our configurations needed for third-party SIP devices. That could be phones, paging devices, etc. Starting with the auto answer switchboard initiated calls, yes or no. The phone's password to be provisioned into the device, the NAT settings, and rapid dial list assignments. Lastly, we have soft phone settings. For soft phone users, we can specify an emergency location, and further the floor, suite, any type of specific indicator where the soft phone user is. We can also force TLS SRTP here, should we have a valid SSL certificate. All right, let's skip ahead and go to permissions. These phone feature permissions control what this user's extension can do. For example, can this user change profile information? By default, 10 out of 10 features are enabled. I can go ahead and click the toggle and fine-grain these features further. So although I may allow these users to change their personal information, I don't want them changing their password. I'll click that to no. You can go down the list and fine-tune these as needed. Let's head over to outgoing call rules. Here I've got a list of outgoing call rules from our main Switchvox settings. Here I can allow or deny the default call rules that are already in place. For example, 1-900 numbers I certainly want to be denied. Now I want to allow a few dialing rules such as toll-free, long distance, local, and 911. The description here shows that they are 9-1 dial outs, whereas I've set on the template to remove the 9 and the 1 from dialing, so those rules all change in my outgoing call rules when I'm finished with my setup. If rules are not explicitly denoted here, all rules will be denied by default. I'm satisfied with those rules. Now let's go to assignment. Like every other feature, this is completely optional, but I can automatically add these template users to a specific group. Since I'm creating this template for my managers, it makes sense that I assign them automatically to the managers extension group. There's a sub-tab here, switchboard layouts, which will automatically assign customized layouts to this group. When they do log into the switchboard, they'll have access to these particular layouts and the features that go along with them. Switchboard will be covered in a later video. Now that I'm satisfied with my template settings, I'm going to save that once more. And now we can use the extension template when creating new extensions. Let's take a look at how that works by heading up to Setup, Extensions Manage. Create Extension button is not just for users with phones, but also for any system routable extension. You can see here our user extensions have a login as this user or sudo login under the actions column. The rest do not. That's because they are system extensions. You can easily filter those out by going to User Extensions, View. Before implementing all the extension creation tools that we've covered, we can take a look at some of the other extensions available. Standard user extension type would be SIP phone or SIP adapter analog, basically the very first one. All of the system extensions available to create are listed here. Remember, the SIP phone is for connectivity. Analog phone would just be perhaps for a shared phone without a specific user. Virtual extension is an extension on the system that can be routed to but doesn't necessarily have a phone attached to it. And then we've got everything from our IVRs to our conferences, logging in and out of queues, call parking and voicemail extensions, that group pickup I alluded to earlier, an echo test to test your two-way audio communication, and a few quick feature code extensions. For a non-exhaustive list, we can go back to the extensions page and click the help icon. At the bottom here we have our extension types, for example, group pickup extensions, with a detailed explanation to guide us through the setup process. For now, let's continue with our SIP phone extension setup for our manager. The extension template that we just set up here, Managers, is also active and ready to use. We've also got the default and any other ones that we've created. So let's continue with that. I'll enter in some personal details. Some fields here filled in by the manager template. Password requirement is 8 to 32 characters, must contain a mix of upper, lowercase, digits, and special characters. I can individually specify that forced password change and the numeric PIN for voicemail. And I'll leave everything else at their default. I can swing up to the phone settings, just verify that the template has the settings that I require. This will be a soft phone only user, so I won't pay much attention to the physical handset settings. The rest of these are already set by the template, including outgoing call rules, and I can save SIP extension now to create that user. Okay, highlighted in blue is my new manager account. Now if I'd like to assist the user with certain settings, I can masquerade as them and log in as this user. This is especially helpful if you want to make changes to the user's profile on their behalf. Also, if you want to log in to their desktop and download their soft phone pre-configured, you can do that through the sudo login. In addition, you'll have access to their personal call logs and recordings and so on. You're essentially logging in as the user, so all the features you would expect from that. I'll finish off by showing you these other features, such as the bulk modify extensions tile. Once selecting the extensions to modify, I can choose what exactly I'd like to modify. For example, the language, and move to those other familiar tabs on the extension settings. While export extensions is obvious that I'm downloading a list of my extensions, That export will contain a list of extension numbers and some of the account details. And lastly, on this page, we have import extensions, offering an easy way to bulk import a list of extensions, whether you're migrating or just want the convenience of working in a spreadsheet and going ahead and just doing a bulk upload. Looking at the help guide, we can see it's a CSV format that's required, some information on LDAP, and the field information expected depending on the type of import, X being required, A accepted, and N not used. You can also copy all of this zip extension file example and put that into a CSV or a text file and save it as a CSV in order to open it in a proper format and read the sample data. So with my data file selected, my extension type, extension template, and duplicate extension behavior, I can then import and read the output. That should be enough to get you going with extension management and creation. In the next video in the series, we'll look at phone deployment and phone provisioning and the Sangoma soft phones.